hey, this person is smart, but if they don't have these skills, what are they doing? How are they impacting the world? And to me, if you're not impacting the world in a better place, I mean, what are you doing?
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Job Chicks podcast. We're your hosts, Melissa and Brittany.
This is a podcast meant to bring you special insight into executive career search, networking, long-term career management, spirituality, and much more.
Brittany and I are full-time executive career coaches helping dozens of executives manage their brand and their career goals.
We work with individuals spanning almost every industry with a variety of high-level titles, including C-suite.
This podcast will give you a deeper understanding of how we coach and assist executives just like you every single day.
We are so happy that you're here, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Everyone, and welcome to the Job Chicks. We are very excited about our guest today. We have Ioanna Onasi, and she is an applied generative AI thought leader and entrepreneur, and she is the co-founder and CEO of Dextico. Welcome. We're happy to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. Likewise, super excited for our conversation.
Yes, I'm very excited. I'm excited to learn more about what you do. I'm excited to learn about your company. And I know that you did a lot of research on high potential employees. And I want to start with that. What made you want to start that research? And also tell us about what you found about that research.
Yes, we can, take the entire time to just talk about this. It's really a topic I'm very passionate about. I actually studied psychology before studying talent development, and I was very curious about what motivates people, what motivates them to work hard, what separates the average from the best. And it always came down to, soft skills, durable skills, human skills. This is the same thing, like the skills that we take for granted sometimes, therefore we don't tend to coach or train on. And something that historically has been either you have it or you don't. And it really is something we can all hone into a thing, no matter how many years of experience we have in the workplace. And truly, I got intrigued by that. And I asked myself, why has training employees been so focused on the technical skills, on the operational skills, yet business is a human to human sport? At the end of the day, let's say three companies do the same thing and they're all pitching you. You will go with the person you just trust more, you like more, and it's a really emotional thing. So I started, with this research trying to figure out why people haven't done it differently. And I just realized it's because it's super hard. It's hard to develop these skills because you develop them through experience. And as a result, you can expect an early stage, early career individual to have these skills if they haven't been in an environment where they had, for instance, good managers or good leaders to look up to. And so I became very curious and ended up working in HR. Was the VP of People and Chief of Staff for another AI sales startup before, and just saw in action how people were struggling, and identified a big gap that unfortunately only executive coaching has touched in the C-suite level. And every time you try to go down the ladder, you get pushback from HR. So I thought, okay, how can we make a solution that impacts both the C-suite, so they care and they want to pay for it, but also each individual in the field to do their day-to-day tasks, achieve their goals, and basically it's a win-win for everybody. Mm-hmm. And outside of the executive coaching, which is more of a one-to-one interaction, it's been very hard to create a solution that's so personalized and engaging because technology was not there yet. And now with AI, we've been actually at a new era where we are able to create super unique user-centric experiences that abide by the company's methodologies, training, best practices, and B, to the individual's needs and adjust for their day-to-day tasks. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the journey and how it all came together based on what I found in the research.
It's interesting research because it's something that Brittany and I talk about all the time, that these soft skills are things that the younger generations really don't know well. They don't know
Yeah.
how to communicate well because everything has been so technically driven in their entire generation. So I feel like we are losing a lot of those soft skills, and the younger generations are not getting the benefit of learning how to communicate. So I think what you do is really important.
I couldn't agree more about Gen Z. I think there's also a cultural element, of course, but particularly the challenge is that now we have four generations in the workplace,
Mhm.
and managers keep training Gen Z the way they were trained. And again, they were brought up in an environment where they had people to look up to and see and learn from experientially, but Gen Z don't have that.
Mhm.
They might get their first job remotely, and through the laptop, there's so much you can learn about soft skills,
Mhm.
right? So we have to evolve. I absolutely agree. There is a huge challenge. Gen Z wants to learn on the one hand, on the other, they don't know where to go. Managers just get frustrated with them that they don't help them and enable them. So we really need to address it because every generation will be worse and worse
Mhm.
if we don't change it
Yeah,
now.
I agree. I agree.
So there's something interesting about the word potential. So in your research that you've done, and by the way, our audience needs to know that you're 26 years old. You have accomplished so much in 26 years that I cannot even imagine where you're going to be at 36 and 46. So I just applaud you for everything you've done. You've put yourself out there. You're also from Greece, which is so phenomenal. But anyways, let's go back to the word potential. High potential employees. How does an employer,
Mhm.
because you have a lot of experience hiring too, even internationally,
Mhm.
how does an employer identify the potential in someone if they're not already showcasing it?
Yeah, and that's the $1 billion question, right? I love that. So there's one thing called stress assignments, and it's known that if you're an A player, you get bored easily, right? If you're in a space where you're not challenged enough, you don't see that potential increasing, or you don't learn, you're gonna get bored. So even if you had that potential, the environment might make it so that you will never actualize it. So the first thing we need to understand here, if you find someone with that potential, it's on you to create that stress environment where they're continuously challenged, yet you don't burn them out. So it's a very thin line, right? But how do you know that someone has that capacity? You kind of have to look historically on how they were able to adjust and how they went out and sought after those stress assignments, because it's kind of like an internal need. You know, if they weren't in that environment, they probably left to find that environment. So there could be some historic signs there that, hey, this person was not satisfied in that company, or their boss wasn't really getting their strength, so they left, or they started something on their own, or they took a chance and went to another country. All these things, even if they didn't have many years of experience, can be seen in someone's resume or in someone's interview. And I think the reasons why they make the changes is also a telling sign, because we have this misconception that if someone is moving from job to job, it's a bad sign. It could be that they weren't accomplishing their goals and they got fired, but it could be also something else. So you have to dig into that through conversation and understand the drivers of that person.
Mhm.
If they say, hey, I left for more money, I mean, okay, you have your answer. But if they said, hey, I couldn't stand being there one more day without being like stimulated mentally,
Mhm.
things like
Mhm.
that, then that's another sign.
Interesting. So tell us a little bit about your company. Where did the name come from? And, what made you feel like this is something that I need to dive into? It's really important.
Yes, for sure. The name stems from dexterity and ego. And I truly believe that one has to have self-awareness in order to say, hey, I need to develop my skills, or hey, there's something more that I don't know out there. So the ego part was more for this self-awareness. And if we think of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right, and we say we need to get to self-actualization, there's so many things you need to do to get there. Some are more internal, some are more external. But I go back to the fact that the environment has to help you get there. If you don't feel safe, right? If you don't feel like you're learning, if you don't feel like you belong somewhere, it's hard to get there. And to me, Dextego was a place to make employees feel safe, that they can train, develop, not get judged as they might feel from a human. They can continuously get something out of it. Like it's not just you completing the same course again and again. It's I can do more, I can do more. There's no layer where my development stops. But I also envision Dextego to be a place where others can connect with each other. So right now we're on the one side of it where it's mostly you interacting with the AI coach, but soon enough you will have access to a community of learners for peer-to-peer mentorship and games, where you can add that human in the loop factor and really put what you're learning into practice. So to take a step back, when I started Dextico, it was focused on early managers. Those that I was saying earlier don't usually have access to executive coaches. But when we went out and tried to pitch HR leaders, we saw a big pushback because think about it. Unless your job is at risk, you're less likely to take a chance to add something new in your company. It makes total sense. HR leaders, yes, do what they can to get training in the company, but 2 years ago, they had COVID. They had a lot of them basically face unemployment. They had all these stresses on their shoulders. The last thing they cared about was a new solution for training. So we said, okay, that sounds like an avenue we should go to later when things settle. What's the quickest win for us? How can we get into a company and have impact? And it ended up being sales, because usually 20% of headcount is sales. A sales leader is much more likely to get fired if they don't hit their quota. Therefore, they're much more open-minded to solutions that can help them get there. And it's also space I knew because I've done sales enablement before. So it all came together. Now we're very much focused on a specific type of sale called consultative sales, because by default they emphasize those human skills. They understand it's relationship based. It's not the transactional. Hey, Melissa, you want coffee? I sell coffee. Go and I call you every time till you buy that coffee. This is not how the world works anymore. So yeah, we're starting there. But again, the vision for us is to expand outside of it, impact all employees at scale, and truly be the go-to place for soft skills development.
I think it's really interesting that Brittany points out that you are 26, which is technically a Gen Z generation. And it's interesting that you had the insight to notice, or the insight to say, my generation needs this, and
Yeah.
and that's rare because I'm not dissing Gen Z. I have a Gen Zer and I have a millennial kid. So
hmm
I feel like you are very self-aware, and I feel like that generation is not self-aware at all, or maybe too self-aware. I don't know. One or the other. Maybe self-focused is a better word for what that generation is. So for you to have that thought that this is something that we need is really interesting and exciting, because I feel like we need more people like you in the younger generations to stand out. So I applaud that.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I think I always valued these skills, honestly, since a kid. These are the things I looked for and I paid attention. I think these are the skills that separate the average from the best, no matter what you do. It could be that you're a professor, if you don't know how to communicate, create empathy with your students, and really guide them in a way that's impactful, and you just have knowledge of the subject and you speak, for instance, for an hour, nobody cares, right? The same thing applied to any other role, I think, is how I've always seen the world. Like, hey, this person is smart, but if they don't have these skills, what are they doing? How are they impacting the world? And to me, if you're not impacting the world in a better place, I mean, what are you doing?
Mm.
You're
That's so
wasting
true.
your life and the people around you as well, right? So I don't know. I formed that mindset since I was very young, and I think the way I connected to intelligence can be good and bad. Like on the one hand, it can be negative to have that mindset because it's harder for you to respect people, right? Because there's a lot of people with high IQ that if you realize that, okay, that is intelligence for me, you'd be happier. When you say, okay, it's actually EQ that matters the most, then you start to see, oh, we have a problem.
Mhm.
So, it can be a blessing and a curse, but to me, it's just a bigger thing than me as Ioanna as an individual that when people ask me how I do what I do and all the risk and how hard it is, and it is extremely hard to start any type of business. I mean, I had a clothing business before. It doesn't matter if it's tech or not, it's 110% difficult. But when you find a topic that is so much more important, I think, than you, and you disassociate your success with the company's success, then you're able to commit much more to that mission.
Mhm.
And to me, like, if I cannot live a happy life because all I see around me is people with no soft skills, then that's a big enough problem to take a big risk and try to make a business
Mhm.
and change.
Amen. That is so amazing. And I have to ask you this question because I know our audience is totally wondering this. Tell us how your AI tool works to develop people. What research did you do, or what research is backing what's actually, because it sounds like your AI tool is, because you were saying you can keep developing and keep developing. So it almost reminds me of a video game where it's like you use the AI tool and you level up, and then you're like, all right, what can I work on next? And then the AI tool helps you level up, which is so cool. I love that. But how did you actually program the AI tool? Like, what is it recognizing within the people that it's being used on?
Yes, definitely. So we developed the human skills model of the soft skills that we found to be transferable across industries and roles. That's the first step, because there is no clear taxonomy of what are these skills that you should be focusing on. And secondly, to your point, it is like a game because it's very experiential. So you tell Dextego, your AI coach, I am practicing, let's say, to cold call Melissa. And now you record yourself with Dextego, so it sees your facial expressions through computer vision, your sentiment analysis, your tone, your persuasiveness, confidence, all these different areas. And on top of that, it analyzes what you say and how you connect that value prop to the persona you're speaking to. So there's a lot behind the scenes where we do analysis also on the persona profile. So what does Melissa care about? What are you talking about? How is that abiding by your company's playbook? So that we make sure you stay also on script but not sounding like a robot. And also, how is that um, giving you self-awareness of your strengths and weaknesses? And that's because when, let's say, you answer and you're very good at like the product knowledge, but you're struggling with the negotiation component, now Dextego will highlight that area of weakness and will next time challenge you on it. So it's taking continuously from your previous answer, taking it to your next challenge, and it's an infinite loop where you are improving your own self by understanding where your areas of weakness are and continuously pushing your own barrier. So it will never say, hey, you in comparison to Ioanna are struggling. It's you in comparison to your own self 2 days ago. And that's what I love about it, because it's not a one size fits all, and that's what Gen AI allows us to do. It's taking us away from like the learning management systems and the, hey, here's your course, learn this thing, and will tell you if you were spot on or not.
Mhm.
Everybody does sales different. Everybody communicates differently. It has to be what's best for them, just in the context of what they do, for who they do it.
Mhm. And I think it's
But
I think it's what you're doing is very important too, because I think it's helpful to people like Brittany and myself who are coaches who can take that feedback from the AI and say, okay, this is where we're going to work. This is how we're going to make it
exactly.
better. And this is how we can coach you to make things better.
You nailed it. It's exactly that. In fact, we do work with executive coaches, and I was going to add that the way we train the model is by getting proprietary data from human experts in these different
Mhm.
areas, like negotiation, like pricing, like consultative sales, like pitching, practice methodologies, all these things. And so it's taking internal and external data, massing this up into our AI, and catering to the end user's level of skills and goals. Because let's say an SDR needs different skills from an SDR manager, from an account executive. So we have to cater to that as well.
This is like making me think back in my teaching years. So I used to teach high school science, and the evaluation system for how administration evaluated the effectiveness of a teacher was insane. You cannot have two administrators in a building that are responsible for 100 teachers. How are those two people possibly going to see enough work from all 100 teachers, let's say, to be able to give proper feedback? I remember this is a true story. I remember when I went to go sit down for my yearly evaluation one year, and administration told me their feedback for me was, Brittany, you shouldn't really reinvent the wheel so much. How about you go get lesson plans from online? And I just remember thinking to myself, well, they obviously just pulled that out of nowhere because they had nothing else to say to me. And they also didn't give me like a reason for that critique. And they also only watched one lesson plan of mine in an entire year. So I can only start thinking how your AI tool can be immersed in so many other arenas. I know you're mostly focused on sales, and I want to ask you more about that in a second, but I feel like the beauty of what you're starting here can have the potential of a ripple effect that can touch so many different industries. So my question to you is, for people who are listening, are you B2B where you're bringing on like a subscription with different companies that want to train their sales reps? Or do you also offer like a one-off, like a B2C where a sales representative, just they themselves want to get better? So tell us a little bit more about what you offer.
Yeah, first of all, I love what you shared because I'm very passionate about education and everything wrong with it. In fact, when we started, I thought it was going to be a B2C product, and I was targeting young graduates that just are looking to upskill themselves before entering the workplace so that they have higher chances of being successful in what they do. But also that demographic is not really capable of spending much money. So then we said, hey, how about schools paying for it? Schools don't also have lots of money to invest in these things. So although my passion was there, and I do think that a lot of the work needs to be done before entering the workplace, it seemed like the best way to approach it was just targeting B2B itself. And now we're actually working on a version 2 of the platform to be launched next month, where we're starting with a freemium model. So individuals can just practice, see if they like it, then upgrade basically to a paid version. And when they go to a company, the company can start paying for them. So if you're in between jobs, let's say, you can still have a profile on your own, but then the company can take care of the cost once you get onboarded. And in that way, I think we can have more impact at scale. Because obviously, if your company can pay for it, but then let's say you leave, you do your own thing, you can carry it with you. The data is still yours, like it's your coaching, right? And again, that's the differentiation from any other training tools that stay within the company.
I think this is something that's perfect for college seniors. If universities across the country were to adapt something like this, and it's a course that every college senior needs to take, I think that is absolutely necessary because they come out of universities and they don't have any idea on number
Yes.
one, a lot of the social skills and how to interview and, what's going to get you the job more than someone else. I think there are so many factors there, and I think that's a market to explore because I think it's absolutely a great opportunity for universities to really offer something like this. It's even an opportunity for other universities to stand out. Hey, this is what we offer.
Yes, and in fact, I'm working now with a university. I can't say the name till it's public yet, but they do have sales courses and they do want to differentiate themselves to your point, that they want to be connected also with AI and innovative solutions. And after that use case, it turned out that there is another one in their cold calling centers, the gifting centers, right? They're picking up the phone, calling alumni, asking for money. It's the same thing. Like what I'm trying to say is everybody's selling. There's so many use cases, but we also have to focus on certain things first to create a flywheel. But every day, like I come up with a new idea and I have to hold myself and say, okay, nope, that's for later. Like we can help everybody, but not all at once.
I can relate to that.
The life of
Yeah,
an entrepreneur.
Hmm.
it's tough.
Yeah.
So, where do you see the future of your company going in an ideal scenario? And I have to ask this only because it seems like you've pivoted so many times throughout the onboarding of how to use this, which is amazing, by the way. I think any company that's going to find long-term success has to be able to pivot when necessary. So I applaud you for that. In a perfect world, where are you going with this? And like, sky's the limit. Paint us a picture.
Yes, I'll tell you a little more short term and then long term. So short term, we want to be after again consultative sales, right? So professional services, financial services, insurance, banking. We really want to own that market, and then outside of that, go to retail. This is the next industry because, in my opinion, and I'm more about the impact, right? When I take off my entrepreneurial hat and thinking about financial models, I'm like, how can we have the biggest impact fast? And retail, there's so many employees around the US, right, around the world in retail that are not being trained. And these people, think about it, can make a huge difference in your mood once you enter a store. If that one person is trained, you have a better interaction. A, the business is going to make more money. B, your day is going to be better. Everything will be fine. So, if we can have that impact, retail stores, not just for clothing, right? But it could be tech, like a Best Buy, like Lowe's, all these huge companies that are hiring constantly. I think if we go there, that is a much easier way to also go internationally because these companies tend to have, like, think of like IKEA, right? Like this type of companies are all around the world. So I think that's a very quick, hard of course, but quicker way to go internationally, which is where my vision is long term. I want this to be available in all languages and really support people of all ages too. Again, whether you're in sales or not, you will have to learn these skills if you want to be different and unique in the AI world where most technical skills will be automated. So eventually we're making this a mobile app and really looking to make it kind of like Duolingo, that's available for everybody, everywhere, but for sales, and then open it up to just soft skills overall.
I'd like to piggyback off of what you were saying about, excuse me, everything internationally, because I was
Mm-hmm.
looking at my notes here, and I know as Americans, the American culture is a difficult time with the work-life balance. It's the grind, the grind, the grind. But in Europe and in other countries, they are very good at the work-life balance, and they have a
Mm-hmm.
4-day work week. What do you think is the future for these two cultures? Do you think that Americans can eventually get to that place, or do you think it'll always be that very different culture?
It's a very interesting question, and I think about it a lot in the context of what's happening also with the hiring freezes and how difficult it is to find a job, right? And going back to the hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy, when you're in a situation that's so stressful, you don't know if you're gonna make your rent, if you can have a vacation, all these like things that people really need. You can't think of balance in your life. By default, your health goes back, your friendships go back, and I see this a lot. There's such a mental health crisis going on, right? That unless we figure these things first out, we can't even consider, I think, how we have a unanimous workplace best practice, whether it's the 4 days, whether it's 5 days, less hours, or what it is. And I think what Europe does well, because the countries are smaller, is they have this unanimous approach to things. US is by default so huge, and every state has its own kind of strengths and weaknesses and challenges that it's just so much harder to see this as one and have one strategy. And I believe that's where the complexity starts from. And then within the different industries, you have also different cultures, like Silicon Valley tech versus retail, or New York City venture capital world versus another area. So it's just a little chaotic to navigate. So unfortunately, I'm not that positive that we will soon be able to get to that work-life balance in the US. I'm not saying that Europe has everything figured out. I think they actually take the play side of things a little too far, coming from Greece. Like we're 3 months, during summer, you're fully off, nothing works. Like that's not also very functional. So we need something in between, where I think, because back to the environment, right? When you have the beach right by your house, of course you're more tempted to go and say no to work and just have fun. But when we see it as, hey, the world is one, we have to have business operations that benefit everybody at any point in time, it requires such a restructuring and a different mindset that, in my opinion, kind of has to come from the government if you want to implement it fast. Or else people will continuously try, and it will be on the company headquarters to make choices for these employees. And then, like with fashion trends, at some point it will trickle down, others will follow. But that route will just take much longer, in my opinion.
But I feel like what you're doing with AI can help with this situation. It can help with that overwork, with the grind, and it kind of consolidates a lot of stuff. And I feel like people will learn quicker. They feel more confident in it. So I feel like what you're doing actually really does relate to helping this problem.
Yes and no. And I'll tell you what the caveat here is, that we think, and I believe it is very effective using AI tools to cut down on all your manual tasks and save time. But unfortunately, because in the US there is such a continuous pressure to do more and more and innovate, that will never stop. The time you win back might not just be time you go out and play, might be time for new work tasks, because now you have to take to a whole other level. You have to compete not only with your peers or competitors in this country, but in another country. And it never ends. It's really toxic if you think about it, and it's something I tell myself too, to stop looking into what's happening in the market and the competition, because it really is irrelevant. If you play this game just to overcompete, you're gonna die before you ever had a chance to succeed. It has to be mission driven. It has to be something you're passionate about, and as a result, if you have that mindset, I think you can tell yourself it's a long term thing, it's a marathon. So I can take that day off. I can work only 4 hours, but for 10 years versus 5 days for 6 months and then not know where I'm at.
Melissa yelled at me because I worked like 12 hours last Saturday. I was in front of my computer just pumping out different reels and social media stuff, and I was having a blast, and she's like, you need to like take a day off, and I'm like, maybe. So it's making me think how relevant this is to so many people who use AI to help automate certain things, and it's lovely. But you're right, I'm not using AI and then going to the beach. I'm using AI and then I'm filling that extra time with other things to keep being innovative and getting ahead. I have to tell you guys about an interaction I had at Honeydew yesterday, because I'm thinking about AI tools, and like 5 years from now, if your tool completely blows up and every company is using it for training, there's gonna be so many people who find themselves out of a job quickly. I went to Honeydew and I saw on the sign that if you buy a $100 gift card, they give you $20 for free. I'm gifting that to myself. So I pull up to the window and she's like handing me my coffee, and I was like, "Hey, do you think that I could add a $100 gift card so I could, get a $20 one for free?" And she was like, she gave me the biggest sigh and an eye roll. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what if there was an AI tool that was installed at every drive-through window to give feedback to managers and owners of stores to see how their employees are performing? People like that are going to find themselves out of a job so quickly that that would cause its own detriment. But I think it would be a lot more efficient to make sure that an entire business is operating as optimally as possible, because you would never keep an employee like that.
So, okay, that's super interesting. And I'll challenge that a little bit, because I've been there so many times where I had these negative interactions and thought exactly the same. I'm like, oh my God, they really have no awareness of how they come across. However, put yourself in their shoes for 1 second. Why on earth would you be happy doing their job for like 20 years? When I go in the airport, these guys that work, like when you're about to go through security and they yell at you, like, move your luggage fast, like, one thing at a time. It's like nuts. You feel scary and scared. I'm like, you're destroying my mood. I'm traveling. I have to be happy. You're yelling at me, but you're clearly hating your job, and I would too. It uses zero skills. All it does is make you miserable, feel worthless, and you go to work with no mission for 20 years straight. I can't expect you to be happy and not yell at people. But that is again an opportunity. It's a huge opportunity to realize what jobs matter and which jobs don't, and not in a way that, of course, people need to eat and need to make money, but how can we restructure society so we have jobs that really uses our skills and can fulfill us and can have an impact? All of these jobs you're talking about should be automated. I think there's no point in having people offering you like a cup of coffee when a machine can take 2 seconds to do it. These people should have other jobs where they actually feel fulfilled and they use their talents in a way that helps society. In that specific situation, this role doesn't satisfy any need because it makes you feel peace. You're going to make the next person feel peace, and it's a domino effect of negativity we can totally avoid by using AI. And again, it requires such a restructuring that it has to come as an organized strategy from the top. You and I cannot change all of that, but we can try, and we can have, our voices be heard. And these stories are so important to be shared because everybody has them. Everybody had that experience you shared once, twice, probably 3 times the last month. What do we do about it, though?
Yeah.
Are we going to stay and say, oh, AI is going to take over all the jobs and be scared? Or we're going to use this opportunity to create better jobs?
Right. I was actually going to say just that. We could do a whole podcast on just that topic, because I find that AI will be taking over those types of jobs. And how do we get those people to think about their skills and their passions to do something that is fulfilling, that's exciting, and making a difference, not just in society, but for them. And I really do feel like we could do a whole podcast on just that, because that's something that we need to start thinking about. If AI is going to be present in a Honeydew Donuts or a McDonald's, what do we do with all of those people who they're not honing in on any skill that they have, and we need to help them figure out what they want to do, and how do we create more jobs outside of AI?
And how do we upskill them
Yes.
is by investing in education, investing in training. These two things that have been always at the back burner of companies. Enough. Like we won't have a sustainable society if we don't prioritize and invest in this thing. Because now every company I speak to, like they're all looking for talent that they can't find it. That's why you see all these people looking for jobs. It's just a skills mismatch. I had an Uber driver yesterday take me to the airport, and he worked at AT&T for 25 years. He was telling me they did layoffs. Like a year ago, he got fired. He's been applying every day for a whole year. Cannot find one single interview, not even job. I hear these stories all the time, and I feel so sad because they have this amazing experience, degrees, masters. They just don't have the skills companies are looking for.
Yeah.
And that is even worse on the entry level roles that can be replaced with AI. Because if you don't allow Gen Z or young graduates to get experience, they will never even get to the point they can apply to the senior roles.
Yep.
So what are we doing? We need to upskill. Companies need to understand that, again, yes, you're looking for talent, but you have to get talent and develop it if you want it to work for you. You can't just find ready-made talent because someone else will take it with a higher salary. But if you get someone and you train them and you develop them and you show them love, they will be loyal.
Absolutely. And that's how you retain employees. That's employee retention right there. When you're nurturing your employees, they feel that sense of loyalty back to you, and you're going to create a better employee environment and a better employee. They'll be more excited to come to work every day.
And they will refer their friends.
Yes.
They're like natural ambassadors for you.
Absolutely. I've watched other interviews with you, and you talk a lot about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So going back to the topic of possibly finding a lot of people out of work as things become more automated, or, if companies are using tools that you offer, and there are some people who are not wanting to get better. Like, let's just make that very clear. We all know people in our own lives, whether we have a touch point with them at Honeydew and experience that, someone we work alongside with, we know that there are people who truly don't want to develop. So I think that we really have to start thinking about creating a society where we're understanding intrinsic and extrinsic motivation at the childhood level. Because once we grow up to be adults, our brains might be too plastered into not being motivated or not feeling confident enough to want to even develop. Because we could have all the AI tools in the world that say, here, use this tool, have this training program. But if that person doesn't want to get better, we're going to have a handful of people in society that there is no place for them. So this is another reason why I'm so passionate about education. I'm sure that you can, relate to this, but we have to start looking at how we're bringing certain elements into our children's lives to really understand those intrinsic and extrinsic motivations. So could you just talk a little bit about how intrinsic and extrinsic motivations play a hand in what it is your AI tool does?
Yeah, it's a great point. I do agree for sure. It has to come from middle school maybe, and seeing just how students behave. But when it comes to AI, then there's so many psychometric assessments you can also embed right in a training solution. But it's coming from the answers the user gives that the AI can understand what's most important for this person. Going back to the example of sales, is it that they want to hit quota and they need their bonus at the end of the quarter? Is it that they want to keep their clients happy? So it's mostly about delivering and basically staying true to whatever they sold them. what is it? What motivates them? And how can we use that as a leverage to get them back to the coaching, back to the training? What is the thing that I'll say to you that you will now pay attention? And there's, only a few things really people get truly motivated by in this life for the long term. And one, for example, has to do with pride, right? Like there's people that just want to make sure everybody likes them, they're on the top, they have a good reputation. That's in ancient Greece, there is something called hysterophymia, which means when you fight in the battle and now everybody remembers you as that one person who was so courageous that till the end you were fighting and now your name is in history. There is this type of people out there. They will be motivated by totally different things than someone who, for example, gets motivated by sex. It's very different mindsets. And the faster we're able to identify that as talent developers or as software developers, we will be able to create better experiences and better user adoption. And if you look back in the last 5-10 years, how many tools have been created that haven't been adopted for the long term or more than 5 days, especially in the B2C world, right? And all these meditation tools and journaling tools. There's a plethora of tools out there that I also have tried for just a couple of days. Why? Because to your point, it wasn't really triggering what I was motivated by. Mm-hmm. And if you're motivated intrinsically, you have to have a lot of self-awareness to understand what that intrinsic motivation is stemming from and understand how you make decisions in your life. Because if someone else identifies that before you do, they can manipulate you to do things you shouldn't be doing.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. This has been such an eye-opening episode. I feel like everyone needs to hear this, young and old, because we all need to adapt to the changes that are coming. So we really appreciate your time today. Thank you for talking about all the amazing things that you're doing. And I hope everybody checks you out. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you, tell us how we can do that.
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn. You can find us on our website, dextego.com. I'm pretty much on all social media, so I'm easy to find.
And we will also link your information to this podcast as well, so people can reach out to you.
Awesome. Really a pleasure to speak to you both. Keep doing what you're doing, and I'm just grateful I've met you along the way.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for listening. This is the Job Chicks podcast, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining our show today. We highly recommend following Brittany and I on LinkedIn and send us a question to air on our show.
We also encourage you to check out the Browning Associates website if you're an executive looking for top-to-bottom rebranding, network outreach, and coaching. You can find the direct links in the episode description below.
See you next time.